grew up in the Pacific Northwest, surrounded by towering pines and thick fog-drenched forests. My dad was an outdoorsman, so I was used to hiking and camping, but nothing prepared me for what I experienced when I was 16. On a solo camping trip that still gives me nightmares. It was early fall. I decided to spend the weekend in an isolated part of the Olympic National Forest. I wanted solitude. No cell service, no distractions. I hiked in about 5 miles and pitched my small tent near a glacial creek. The day was peaceful. The only sounds were birds and the rush of water. But at night, it changed. The first night, I woke up to this weird clicking sound outside my tent. Not branches or leaves. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like something tapping the side of my tent, slowly. I held my breath. I told myself it was a raccoon or maybe a squirrel, but something about the cadence didn't feel animal. It felt intentional. It went on for about 2 minutes, then stopped. I stayed up the rest of the night clutching my knife. The next day, I found footprints. Not boot prints, bare feet, human-looking, but wrong. The toes were elongated with claw-like impressions at the tips, and they circled my tent. I should have left, but I didn't. That night, I built a fire and stayed close to it. Around 2 a.m., I heard movement in the trees. I aimed my flashlight toward the sound and saw eyes. High up in the trees, at least 10 feet off the ground. Not animal eyes. They glowed faintly, but not like a deer's. And they didn't blink. Then they vanished. I started backing toward my tent, and that's when I heard the clicking again. Closer, louder. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I made it back to the trailhead at sunrise, scraped and shaking. I left my gear behind. When I told the ranger what happened, he didn't laugh. He just stared at me and said, "Abel, it's part of the forest. We don't go there anymore." Three years ago, I took a photography trip to the desert plains of New Mexico. I was there to capture wild landscapes. The kind of eerie, alien beauty the desert holds when the sun starts to set. I had been warned about the coyotes, but I thought I was prepared. I had a large knife, bear spray, and I planned to camp near my SUV, not far from the main road. It was quiet at first. Too quiet. Music cue, deep low ambient rumble begins. That night I set up camp just off an old dirt trail near the base of some rocky hills. I had a perfect view of the full moon overhead. I cooked, took photos, and finally crawled into my tent. That's when the howling began. It started as a single voice, far off. But then more joined in. They didn't sound normal, not like the coyotes I'd heard before. These howls had a rhythm, like they were coordinated. And they were getting closer. I peeked outside. Eyes, dozens of them, reflecting the moonlight, just beyond the edge of my camp. I slowly reached for the bear spray, heart pounding. They didn't move. They just watched. I went back into the tent, zipped it tight, and stayed dead silent. Hours passed. The howls would rise, then fade, only to return again. Always surrounding me, circling. I didn't sleep, but at sunrise they were gone, but they left something behind. All around my tent were paw prints, but not just coyote prints. There were ones that looked wrong, too large, too narrow, as if something had stood on 2 legs. There were claw marks on my car door, and there was a dead rabbit with its eyes missing, placed right in front of my tent flap. A gift, a warning. I packed up and left in under 5 minutes. When I returned to town and showed a local tracker the prints I had photographed, he frowned and asked, "Where did you say this was?" I told him, He looked me dead in the eye and said, "That's not coyote territory, that's skinwalker land, and you were lucky." I grew up in rural Oregon, and my dad was a park ranger. Naturally, I spent a lot of time in the forest. I'd seen everything: deer, bears, coyotes, even the but nothing prepared me for what I saw when I was 17. It was the last week of summer, and I had taken my younger cousin Jacob camping with me near an old fire watchtower deep in the woods. The area hadn't been patrolled in years, and that isolation was part of the appeal. The first day was fine. We fished, told stories, and hiked trails. But that night, something changed. We were by the fire, roasting marshmallows, when Jacob suddenly froze. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I listened. At first, nothing. Then, a snap. A branch breaking from up in the trees. Not behind, not around it. Above us, I shined my flashlight upward, and that's when I saw them. 2 glowing orange eyes, about 30 feet up, staring down at us, not moving. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a raccoon, an owl? But these eyes were too wide apart, too human. I called out. The eyes blinked, then vanished. Not as if they turned or flew away, but like they were sucked into the darkness. Jakob wanted to leave. I convinced him to wait until morning. Big mistake. Around 3 a.m. we both woke up to scratching into the tent walls. Above us again. I didn't want to unzip the tent. I just lay there holding a knife, praying we weren't being hunted. Eventually, the sound stopped. But in the morning, we found claw marks on the roof of the tent. Not the sides, the roof, nearly 8 feet up. More unsettling, their footprints. Human-like on the trees, as if something had climbed down from above. We packed up immediately. Later, I told my dad. He didn't say much, just looked at me quietly and said, "Some things live out there that don't belong in any ranger manual. You respect the woods and they might let you leave." I haven't camped since. Back in 2015, I took a solo road trip through New Mexico. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship and needed space, the kind you can only find in the desert. I planned to camp near an old canyon trail, somewhere off the beaten path. The kind of place where the stars feel close enough to touch and silence buzzes louder than any noise. I arrived late in the afternoon, set up camp, and enjoyed the stillness. No cell service. No people, just the dusty breath of the desert and the crunch of gravel under my boots. At dusk, I saw it. A dog, mangy-looking, thin, limping, standing just beyond the edge of my campfire's light. It looked injured, like it had a broken leg. It didn't growl or bark, just stared at me. I tossed a piece of jerky in its direction, but it didn't move, didn't blink. And then it stood up, not onto 4 legs, but 2. Its back straightened with a grotesque crack, like joints rearranging until it towered over 6 feet tall. Its face was still dog-like, snout, matted fur, yellow eyes. But its body, thin, wiry arms, long fingers tipped with claws. It didn't make a sound. He just took a step toward me. I grabbed my keys and flashlight, heart pounding, but when I flicked the light toward it, it was gone. Vanished. But there were footprints in the sand where it had stood. Deep, 3-toed tracks that didn't match anything I've ever seen. I barely slept that night. In the morning, I packed up fast. But just before leaving, I saw something scratched into the back window of my SUV. 3 letters. But this happened in the fall of 2021, when my cousin Evan and I went on a weekend camping trip in the Pacific Northwest. We're both outdoorsy types, hiking boots, water filters, flint fire starters. We loved the quiet. The forest we picked wasn't a major campground. It was one of those lesser-known backcountry zones, miles from the nearest town. We set up near a small clearing close to a river. The first night was normal. We ate, joked, drank a little, and turned in early. But at around 3 a.m., I woke up, not to a sound, but to the absence of one. The forest had gone silent. No crickets, no wind. Even the river sounded muted. And then, a scream. It echoed through the trees, sharp and raw, like a wounded animal, but wrong. Too loud, too human. Froze, listening. Evan stirred in the other tent. Then we heard it again, closer, and footsteps. Heavy ones, something large, crashing through the brush just beyond the tree line. Evan unzipped his tent and whispered, "What the hell is that?" I didn't know. We had bear spray, a small hatchet, but neither of us moved. Then we saw it, a tall silhouette, over 7 feet, stood at the edge of the clearing. Its body was animalistic, bent limbs, fur, and a snout. But it walked upright, limbs twitching like a puppet held by invisible strings. Didn't approach, just swayed slightly side to side. Then it screamed again. Only this time, it screamed my name. I nearly threw up. Evan was shaking, whispering prayers. We didn't sleep that night. By dawn, it was gone. We packed up faster than I thought humanly possible. And when we got back to town, Evan told me he had dreamed of it weeks earlier. Same scream, same clearing. He just never told me. Some animals are just animals. Bears, coyotes, wolves. But some things that walk the woods at night aren't meant to be seen by people. Because once they see you back, they never forget your name. And that concludes our terrifying journey through 5 true scary animal encounter horror stories. From wolves that watch with human eyes to things that scream your name in the dark, it's clear that not all monsters walk on 2 legs, and not all animals belong in our world. If you made it this far, take a deep breath and double-check your surroundings. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who thinks the woods or the desert are safe at night. Until next time, stay in the light, and remember, predators aren't always what they seem.